Hello, friends. Welcome back to Late Night BJs. You're here with me, Buko Juice, and tonight I want to talk about Session Zero Con. Okay, but before we start, let's tinker with a few things. As you can see, I now have a new overlay. Uh, thanks to Bianca, or otherwise known as Momentos. I commissioned her to work on this a little bit for me, and it's very on brand, isn't it? There's actually a bunch of coconuts on the lower right. I'm not sure if you see it. Let's move it a little bit so you can see it. See, I really like it. Now, what do we need? We need music, right? I have recently been looking at pretzel rocks for some of my music, and let's see. It's late at night, so I think lo-fi beats are nice, right? So let's start playing lo-fi, and then chambahan na lang if it's good or if it's bad. Then we'll see. You know, Path Less Traveled by Harris Heller or High at the Planetarium. Okay, let's adjust my music a little bit. As I've mentioned before, I am I'm having a hard time talking to myself when there's nothing to listen to, or I don't hear anything. I mean, it is late at night here and it's very quiet. So tonight I want to talk about Session Zero. So what is Session Zero? Session Zero is actually the second convention here in the Philippines about local RPG designers and the products that they can showcase. So it's really an open invite to participants who want to get into the RPG scene. So as long as you have something that is playtest worthy, you can showcase it here. Although I think at this point the exhibitors or the contributors have already signed up, and the event itself is going to be live soon. By that I mean the sign-ups for the event itself. And since it's an online convention this time around because of the pandemic, there's actually a good way to sorry, there's actually an avenue for everyone to participate regardless of where you are. That's what I was trying to say. So what G&G is currently using is a tool called Gather.town. I really like it. I was there during their testing of the service. Let's look at it really quick. Gather.town. And it's nice. It really reminds me of Pokemon. If you've played Pokemon, you have like your tiny little sprites here, like that one. See? So you have tiny little sprites, and then when you approach someone else's sprite, their camera will pop up and you can talk to them. But there's also a proximity kind of deal, because when you are farther away from someone, you don't hear them, so noise is not that much of a problem. And there are also private rooms that you have to enter for you to be able to access the camera and the audio of the person. So it's very good for emulating that feel of being in a convention with people without actually putting ourselves at risk. We're still in the time of the pandemic, so we still need to stay safe. But the plus side here is that if you are awake during the time of the convention, you will be able to check it out, and you will be able to hang out with us and look at RPG SEA products. And because of that, we also don't have to fly in RPG SEA representatives from other countries in Southeast Asia. So I expect you to see game designers from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Singapore, hopefully from other Southeast Asian countries as well as they join us. So let's see. So this is where we will be. But for my end, excuse me, before we start, as I mentioned before, when you are at late night BJs, you must always have hydration. I am cheating a little bit tonight because my hydration is Bike and Brew, Bayani Bike and Brew. This is cold brew coffee, creamy latte this time. So there's milk, and milk is a very, very good for hydration, but it's also coffee, so it will dehydrate me in turn. So I will need to drink water after this. But also, stay hydrated. Need some shaking because it's been in the fridge for a few days now. I've been saving this for this exact occasion. But also, this is a bit of a gamble for me because drinking coffee at this hour is probably not going to be good for my body, especially since I have work at 3 p.m. Southeast Asian time. So one way or another, I need to be asleep by around 4 to 5 a.m. But if I drink this, and cold brew is pretty strong, if I drink this, I will probably be awake until 8 a.m. So it is, for reference, it is currently 2:16 a.m. here in the Philippines and elsewhere in Southeast Asia. Oh, although Indonesia, I play UVG with a bunch of RPG SEA folks, and Indonesia is behind us by an hour. So if it is 2:15 a.m. here, 2:17 now, it's 1:17 a.m. over there. Which is funny because Malaysia is farther to the west, so you would expect them to be earlier. But I suppose because they are long in terms of longitudinal area. Does that make sense? I don't really have a lot of units in geography, but since they're long in longitude, I think they just picked their capital and then based their time from there. When I was in Malaysia a few years ago, their 7 p.m. was still very bright. Well, I'm not used to that in the Philippines, kasi when it is already 7 p.m., it is already dark. Especially now during Christmas time, it starts getting dark at around 5 p.m. even. So let's see. I wonder what that sound is. I want to make sure I shake it properly so that it's properly distributed. Then let's open it up. Ooh. I'm a heavy coffee drinker, so I really like my coffee. But at least I have the sense of mind to not drink black coffee at this hour. Amazing. Alright, so now you will probably laugh at me because we are going to check how much work I have been doing for session 0 so far. And let me open my OneNote. Ta-da! We have a blank page. That's because we almost have nothing. I mean, we do have some things, but let's see, I'm moving my keyboard aside for the moment. And then bringing out my, or rather, Bianca's drawing tablet. There. Does that work? And then maybe I can put my keyboard on my lap. And then let's see, is this comfortable? Testing. Oh, that works. So let's see. Keep it on my lap. So, I don't exactly have... Oh, that's odd. Ooh, give me a moment. Yeah. So, okay. It's a Wacom pen that I unfortunately dropped just before the stream started. Don't tell Bianca. She's asleep. Haha, then she'll watch this and then I will get busted anyway that I dropped the pen. I should probably just come clean and say I dropped it. But it seems to still work. Yeah, okay. So I have drafts of ongoing stuff. Specifically, I believe I have enough drafts to complete. So let's see. Let's try to plan for session 0. Session 0. So, ideal is to have 3 new products. New stuff. And then I also have existing stuff. On the existing stuff, I have Kakamania, which I'm pretty proud of. Kakamania. So this will be showcased. And then I also have Alamat ng Astig. This one is not mine per se. This is done by my friend Fabio Makisig, who you might know as a wrestler from Manila Wrestling Federation. So he's also a geek and he writes RPGs as well. Alamat ng Astig is one of the first, if not the first, Tagalog RPGs out there. And you can find it on itch. There's a strong 90s theme here. 90s theme. 90s rural adventure theme. There's also an element of the 90s action heroes and stuff like that. But I believe Fab's main inspiration for Alamat ng Astig was more based on Pedro Penduko. Inspired by Pedro Penduko. Check it out because it's interesting writing things in Tagalog. So this one is published by Buko Games, so it's not written by me. So it's something that I also do. If you are a local game designer and you want to publish something, you have written something but you don't have the resources for the layout or for the artworks and stuff like that. If I like your product, I can buy it. I can buy the rights to sell it from you, and then of course you will retain the authorship and you will retain promotional value from it. But at the same time, what I will do is I will invest the resources to lay it out and get artists for it and produce it. So it will be produced by Buko Games, but it will remain your product, is what I'm saying. So if you're interested in that, just hit me up and we'll see what we can do. So that's Alamat ng Astig by Fabio Makisig. I think he credits himself as Chris Fabon in the RPG space. Right. Check it out. What else? 1, 2. These are the 2 things that that I have already. And then we have my ideal 3 new stuff is so we have ideal of 3 new stuff. Let's maximize it, shall we? There you go. The first one is May Lakan Dyan. This is actually like 85% done. This is a bit of a long one. Let's see. See if I can find it. Here. May Lakan Dyan is actually quite well written already. The idea behind it was that I wanted to write something that is reminiscent of the 30-second ancient histories. Let me pull one up just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Let's go for Rome. Yeah. Okay. This is 30-second ancient Rome. I really like the format of this book. It's a history book, as you can see, but it is written in bite-sized chunks. So for example, we have this one is a 30-second read on philosophy. For example, as you can see, they have a 30-second spiel, some sidebars from over here. So some sidebars, 30-second spiel, and then on the next side you have like art or a photo of what they were talking about. So check it out. currently have 3 of the books here. 32nd Ancient Rome. I also have 32nd Ancient China and 32nd Ancient Egypt. What I like about it is that it explains a culture that in a way that is easy to digest but also easy to ignore for things that you don't like. So my idea for May Lacanjan was that this is a setting, this time a fantasy setting that is inspired by pre-colonial Philippines, but not necessarily historically accurate to it. That's one main difference, I think, between May Lacanjan and the Islands of Sinauna, which I contributed to. Sinauna basically followed a pattern of, will it fit 5th edition? Is it pre-colonial accurate? And then after that, there's the creative sphere underneath. So you have your 2 criteria. For me, it's accurate. Is it accurate to the culture? That's the first level that I have. Does it conform to my ideas? And then you have the creative sphere here. And then below that is like a small scaffolding of 5th edition. So that's the difference. And I wanted to present it in such a way that the first part is just this one big lore book. So you have a section on people, you have a section of life, and then you have like a bunch of 30-second spiels for each of these. And then each of them will be a spread. It will be a page on, it'll be a write-up on the left with some sidebars, and then on the right it will be artwork, which I already commissioned. And then the second part will be a small set of rules. Most of the rules I've actually already written down and is available on my Patreon. So my Patreon is patreon.com/bjgames. Oh, hello. Hello, Josh. Thanks for passing by. This is my regular, well, semi-regular late night BJs. So, thank you for dropping by. So anyway, here we go. You are in my Patreon. And let's look for it. I think it is the quick start. Oh, that doesn't work. Haha. Let's look by tags. I believe we'll find it if we look for the May Lacanjan tag. I've been working on this on and off for several years. I've actually been working on this much longer than I have been working on the Islands of Sinauna. And part of me is actually wondering what to do with it, because it does also use a 5th edition scaffolding, but it is slightly redundant now that Sinauna is out. But I think it's significant enough because Sinauna still uses 5th edition very faithfully, whereas in my case, I even tossed that out for my own magic system. Even though the mathematics of it all is still 5th edition, you still have what your expected hit points would be at several levels is from 5th edition. The monster strength is derived from 5th edition, but a lot of the mechanics have changed. So let's see, blah 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 blah. By the way, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/bjgames, because all of these are free to download. They are funded by my patrons, not by my pocket, or not by your pocket, so you don't have to pay anything to read these. Although, of course, if you want to be one of my patrons, then I would welcome it. I am currently in the process of changing up my tiers. The tiers will remain the same, but as my priorities have changed in the last year on what to work on, then you will be able to access different benefits based on, because currently the benefits are related to May Lacanjan, but since we're trying to get it out by January, I also want to change it so that when you become my patron, you get new benefits. Am I making sense? Anyway, let's look for the quick start. So, trees. Also, check it out for the nice art. I really like the work of my artists, as you can see. Boop, boop, boop. Wow, the quick start was a while back. Nakanbakod. Maybe it will show up if I... There you go. Boop. Boop. Ha! Found it. Oh, sorry. I just got this, Josh. Why so late? Because that's the best way to make the hashtag work, right? Late Night BJs. So it has to be late at night. Hoping to go to session 0 as a participant. If you want to join, poke some G&G meets at Twitter and ask them how to hook you up. Let me give you a quick link to that. I don't know their exact handle, but let's see. G&G. There you go. It's G&G meets. So leave them a PM. Their social media is well manned, and someone will respond to you in time. Right? It's sometime in January, late January, if I'm not mistaken. Now, where were we? Quick start. Yes. What I wanted to say is that the quick start is already like, I think it won't be the final version. I do want to have some tweaks on this based on playtest. I had this playtested a little bit. So you have your culture, you have your classes, and then currently the magic system is not yet here, but I think I will also have a handle on that now. It's related also to the utang na loob mechanic. So magic is still transactional with the Diwatas. So I wanted to finish this and get it out of the way because I also want to move on to other projects. But I'm quite interested in seeing how this will play up with Sinauna, because what I can say is that even though it is its own thing and it tries to present Philippine culture from a local Filipinos perspective, because Sinauna has a strong diasporic lens to it. I will note that the two will be compatible, I think, because they're both 5th edition based. So you can supplement Sinauna with May Lacanjan and vice versa. You can use Sinauna mechanics to run May Lacanjan if you find the May Lacanjan house rules to be too simple, because my goal is to have a simplified version of 5th edition. There are only 3 ability scores, for example. Force, Guile, and Calm. Still waiting for the participant list to go up. Last I heard it's opening soon. Yeah, I think so. I was talking to Rachel a few days ago, and I think she has mentioned, don't quote me on this, but I think it's next week. So, it's close. Something for... Oh yeah, she has mentioned it in our UVG stream earlier today. Eric and Rachel plugged it real quick. It starts on Tuesday next week. So, where were we? So the plan is to mix it all together, add in my magic system, complete the layout, and then release it. I think it will be a decent sized notebook. But also, I've gotten to the point wherein I got my foot into the door by writing about Philippine mythology and Philippine culture specifically. So, like a very focused lens. But that's not all that I can do. I want to show the RPG community that I can design things that will still be Filipino by virtue of it being designed by me, a Filipino. But I want to like tackle cyberpunk. I want to tackle modern things like that. I feel like tonight's Late Night BJ will be a little bit longer than my previous ones because there's a lot to say, I think. So that is my first part. May Lacanjan. It's 85% done. It's scattered about, but or at least in terms of writing, right? In terms of writing. there's still quite a bit of work to do with this. There is still editing, of course. Let's change that. Let's change that to green. Still need editing. And I still need to... We need to be closer. There's editing, there's layouting. And then there is finishing up the art. Finishing up the art. So I already have a person here. I already have a person in charge of this. Although I will probably be stressing her out because I haven't shown her the list of things that I need yet. And then I need it by January. She's gonna hate me. Layouting, well, usually I ask Bim to do this for me. Of course, even though we are partners, I pay her. Always pay your people, right? Oh, hey, Sam. So layouting is probably Bim. Hire her for layout. Her layout is awesome. But if she gets busy, I'm going to try to tap Paladin, because he has mentioned that if I want to do layout, yeah, then I can hire him for it. Paladin, one of the Sina Una people. Editing is something that I'm currently lacking. Who will I get? But anyway, all of these are no longer me. So I will basically be working with people. It's not my main responsibility anymore once I finish the writing. But it's something that I have developed some it's not skill, some experience with when I write about, one of the things that I learned pretty early on as Buko Juice Games, and earlier when I was branding myself as Nosfekatu, is that I happen to know how to get them to work under a vision and things like that. So again, if you're interested in something like that, you have something written and then you think it works well with my branding of Filipino games, but you don't want to really bother with the layout and stuff like that, we can work something out so that it can be released under the banner of BJ Games. So anyway, looking back, so this is the fourth item. You know, it's hard to get that scroll bar when it is when it is in full screen. Okay. So moving on. Second, I think I have enough time to tweak the Sons of Layao. If you were here 2 late night BJs ago, I talked about the Sons of Layao. Was it 2 weeks ago? Actually, I think this was my topic last week. Oh. So the Sons of Layao is also in my Patreon. Let's see. How do we find it here? Posts. Posts dashboard. As you can tell, I haven't... Oops, that's not for public eyes. As you can tell, I haven't been to Patreon in a while. Let's see. Maybe I can just search for it on Google. Patreon, Sons of Layao. Oh, there you go. That's easy. So, I talked about this last time. I don't want to really go back to it. But what I will say is that when I was talking about it last week, there was enough interest in it, and there was enough interest to make me want to revisit it and polish it and release it as its own thing. It's going to be very similar to my Cockamania product, which is, let's see, So Cockamania is one of my first products as Buko Juice, and it's going to be system agnostic, but with the expectation that it functions under my Melacanjan rule set. So it's a good supplement to have. If I'm going to release Melacanjan, I'm also going to have Sons of Layao and Cockamania as possible adventures for you to play with May Lacanjan, but not necessarily with May Lacanjan. If you want your own system for it, then you can work that out. Okay, so that's my second idea. Sons of Layao, polish, and then release. That still worked though, because I think when I wrote Sons of Layao, it was in 2017, 2016. So the rule sets are no longer as compatible. I kind of want to focus on May Lacanjan because I need to finalize the rule set. And when I finalize the rule set here, then I will be able to... Oops. It's gone again. If only we can scroll to the right easily, but I cannot do it. Anyway, let's just say from here, I will use the rule set. Here, right? So this remains to be my priority, finishing May Lacanjan. Then once that's done, we are now at the pipe dream levels. Pipe dream. Not to be confused with Kaipo's pipe dream. I think Kaipo has a product in itch. The Malaysian designer, Kai. He has a product called Pipe Dream, which is also a fine product. Check it out on itch. Let's look for him. Itch Pipe Dream. Pipe Dream. There. Rollover Play Dead. Pipe Dream is a sword dream role-playing game of detectives, problem solving, and rural mysteries in a fantastic world, or a farcical drug comedy. You may play it as both. Check it out. It's actually fairly long. Yeah. Well, fairly long for a small indie game. Does that make sense? Anyway, check that out. But that's not what I'm talking about here. This is what I mean is, if I have time, if I somehow finish these two early enough such that I can work on other things, then maybe I can work on number 3 and number 4. So what are these? I have 2 products in mind that are not finished by a long shot. The first one is Taller Punk, or Project Taller Punk. This one is basically, the idea here is that it's all the 90s, all of it. All the 90s. Which includes the 1590s, which is the time when the Dasmariñases were the governor generals of the Philippines, governor generals. And then we have just been conquered by Spain, and so there is the element of authority. Why did my thing suddenly become thick? It's dependent on how I write with it. Okay. So it's the 1590s, so an expression of authority, but also 1890s, which is around the time of the Philippine Revolution, the Katipunan. No, something to note, when you're talking to a Filipino and they mention the KKK, there's nothing there's nothing racist about it, because that is actually the kataas-taasang, kagalang-galangang katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan, the KKK. Well, when I try to write this, I prefer to write it in baybayin, the kakaka. The Katipunan is actually a revolutionary movement in the Philippines. For independence back in the 1890s. It evolved into the Philippine Revolution, which became the first Philippine Republic, which was then conquered by the Americans. So, yay, colonialism. But also there is the authority figure, and there is the resistance against the authority. So that's what makes it punk. But it is also the 1990s. So you have the Cubao aesthetic. So my childhood was in the 90s. So Cubao aesthetic is like that. The Cubao then was not as cramped as before, but there were like giant billboards hand painted with movie posters, and then you have color, but you also have that dust and grime of an urban city, of no, not urban city, that's redundant. The grime of that part that makes it like dirty, and it feels like it's the past, but it is also modern. I'm not sure I'm explaining it right, but anyway, it's the aesthetically, I'm going to draw a lot from the 1990s. I guess the best way to talk about the Talier project is to show off some of the art I have for it. So I already had some art commissioned. Let's see if I can find it. I think it is in my Buko Juice folder. There. Is it here? Talier Punk. Some of it. I only see one. You know what? I think the best way to check it out is through my Discord. So let's see. Discord. Bum, 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 bum. I hesitate to open up Discord because it's actually a little bit heavy. A little bit heavy on my processing power, especially when I'm also streaming. But let's see. Art. Messages failed to load. See? Something's wrong. So it's actually interesting because I do live in the Philippines, and our internet is not as good as some of you from the West. It's just what it is. Panday Bulawan. Oh, this is some art from Alamatang Astig, and that's some art from Melacanjan. This one is Macario Sakai. All right. So try to go for this kind of aesthetic. Let's see. I think I have a few more here. Oh, it's not here. Let's look for it elsewhere. Art chat. Art references. Oh. So there's a lot of grime and a lot of stained glass effects, and some cyberpunk ideas. So this is like, it's dirty, it's messy, but it's also modern. There, I think that's Atelier. So Atelier is a mechanic shop. Then that's kind of like the feel that I'm going for the what's the word? For Talier Punk. And I don't even think it's going to be Talier Punk when it finishes. It's the project code, so to speak, but that's not what I wanted to call it in the end. So as you can see, it's still being written and it's still being developed. I'm not sure if I'll be able to finish it by January. Let's close Discord because that is taking up a lot of space. So that's the Cubao aesthetic. So it's also the 90s. But I mentioned that it's taking inspiration from the 1590s, from the 1890s, and from the 1990s. But it's also the 2090s. So we're going to have like laser guns. Laser guns, augmented reality, AR, and what else? What else would be maybe arcologies? I feel like the idea of an arcology, wherein basically it's a large building that is self-sustaining but also isolated from the outside world, is a very apt symbolism for the Metro Manila condominium experience, don't you think? Basically, there's a lot of suffering outside, and it's easy as a middle class person to lose sight of that, to be isolated in the small comforts of your own space, and to not help out those who are less fortunate. Wow, that got a little heavy. So, it's going to have some 2090s aesthetic. So, the question is, so what time period is it going to be set on? It's going to be set on all of them. It's not defined. It's just the 90s. What century it is exactly can depend on you, but it's going to borrow from all of these centuries. So you could have something that is very focused on the Philippine Revolution, but then you have modern cyberpunk hacking AR weapons, so very cyberpunk kind of deal, but also be fighting against a colonial authority that is based on the 1590s, while maneuvering a world that is very 1990s in aesthetic. So I'm excited about the Taller Punk project. I feel like there's a lot of things I can do with it, but also I want to take my time with it. So I'm not sure if I will finish it by January, in time for session 0. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3. That's 5 products. There's actually a from product number 6 or product number 4 for my new stuff. This one is something that uses Fate, but this is even less well developed than my Taller Punk project. Something that uses Fate. One of the things about me is that I'm a sucker for romance movies, like indie movies that focus on romance that doesn't necessarily have a good ending, where there's a lot of cliches about love and love lost, things like that. I feel like the drama of that, of having characters with aspects and flaws, is well represented by the Fate system. And I think Fate's RPG. I think Fate recently came out with an abridged version of their rule set. Let's see. I think I have it downloaded. Tabletop RPGs. And it comes free, so I'm pretty sure it's okay to share it on stream. Fate condensed. There you go. Fate condensed. Pop. View. So check out Fate condensed. I'm quite interested in actually running or developing a Fate setting that allows you to roleplay in a Philippine movie world. So there's your usual elements of drama, of relationships, and also there's enough there to simulate the magic of a Filipino setting, but also from the lens of the local movies. So let's see, Cinema 76. Oh, but I don't think I can run anything from this because they are all going to be Cinema 76 Film Society. It's interesting. You can look at Cinema 76. I'm not gonna click it because I'm afraid of running into some copyright issues. It's interesting to look at Cinema 76 for indie Filipino films, and those are the things that I'm really fond of. One thing I could show you is go to Buko Juice Games .blogspot.com. Bam. And yeah, there we go. I have a review of Ulan here, and there's the Fantasy as RPG inspiration. So I kind of want to work out a way to reveal a setting that allows you to run these kinds of stories with Fate, because I happen to like Fate as a system. I know that it is a little bit, what's the word, aged. I think it has aged by now because I think it's a 10-year plus system. But also, I like how it simulates interpersonal relationships really well. For me, at least. I know there are other systems that do the same thing, but Fate is where I'm most comfortable in, and that's where I want to work with. Plus, fancy dice. I'm actually a sucker for fancy dice. So, what's the probability of this showing up? What's the probability of this showing up in session 0? Up. Probability of finishing. Finishing in time for session 0. In time for S0. Low. But let's try. The good thing is that I have, or rather we have, holidays coming up. I think I still have work on the 21st up to the 23rd. But I took the entire week after off, so this whole week here is off for me. And maybe there's enough time for me to finish a bunch of stuff, because these two, the first two, are almost done already. This is just a lot of polish work. Right? This is polish work. Meanwhile, Palier Punk, I would say this is around 15% done. So there's a lot of work left, lots to do. And I'm not sure if I will be able to finish it on time for session 0. And Fate is so raw at the moment that this is unlikely. But we'll see. With one entire week free, assuming I don't just end up playing video games, I will have time to finish a lot of stuff. And also that's 24 and 35, 36. Although, of course, some of those will be reserved for family. So there. Those are the things that I'm planning for session 0. This is such a high level plan. It's a high level. High level. This is a high level plan, and because of that, I haven't actually proceeded with anything of any of these during the stream, and I don't think I will. I don't think being on stream is going to give me some productivity, but it will help me plan. And I think it helps to show everyone else my plans. What do you guys think? Do you think I'll be able to finish all of these? But imagine if I do, right? To have 6 products on display. If I finish this, I will have 6 products on display. It'll be a very interesting session 0 if so, right? Anyway, I think that's enough for tonight. It is a little bit longer than what I was That's what I'm used to. But also the longer ones mean that I have more to say, even if mm, I'm just now realizing that I did not press on record. Haha, I have to download it from Twitch later. What was I saying? Sorry, I really lost myself there. It's longer, but I have more to think about, rather. And what is Late Night BJ for in the end? What is this? What is this stream for? I think this is just for me to talk to myself and figure out what I need to do, and also try to get my ideas condensed into something concrete that I can work on. So it's basically a brainstorming session. I think that's what Buko Juice, that's what Late Night BJs are starting to become. They're becoming a space for me to talk about and ramble about things until I figure something out and create something out of that. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. But I'm also toying with the idea of having a Late Night BJs with guests. That should be interesting, right? But I wonder who will be awake unless I invite Westerners who are, it's afternoon in the West right now, so it might be. But who will come though? Huh? It would be more interesting if I could invite fellow Southeast Asians, but that would mean convincing them to be awake at this hour. Maybe Sam, because Sam shows up at this hour. That means you're awake, Sam, if you're still there. Probably not. And there. We'll continue next week. I suppose next week I will start with a progress report of what has been happening here. And then after that, I will proceed to the next topic. Right? So, thank you for showing up for tonight's ramble. And see you next week. Goodbye.